How do you find an enemy who is hidden right before your eyes?
كان في أحد الخونة الموجودين بالمكتب وهو حاجب.
أكيد في أجهزة مخابرات مخترقة بسوريا، أكيد، خاصة الموساد.
From the four corners of the world come moles who play a deadly game of espionage in Syria.
التعاون السعودي الإسرائيلي على الصعيد الأمني وثيق، كما أنه دور الأمريكيين بهذا التعاون يكمل فعالية الطرفين بسوريا.
It's not a thriller. It's not a crime movie. It's an intelligence war raging in Syria.
These days, Syria appears in the news headlines across the globe. But sadly, they rarely ever project the country's natural beauty, its rich culture, or ancient history. Nowadays, the news about Syria is the news of a war that has ripped through the country, devastating a nation. I'm Sahar Akju, and you're watching Aperture. Well, today on Aperture, we too will be looking at the ongoing crisis in Syria, but from a different perspective. This week's exclusive Presstv documentary will reveal the clandestine war being waged on Syria, a series of premeditated and calculated attacks intended to eradicate Syria's leading state and army figures. An intertwined web of various intelligence agencies and terrorist groups are active in secret underground operations to eliminate certain figures as Syria is trapped in a network of intelligence wars. Stay with us for the details. Here is the first part of Intelligence Wars in Syria.
This is the Madha Highway, and the road behind me is the road Colonel Hafiz Makhlouf's car followed when he left his house outside Damascus.
The bomb was placed inside a car by Israeli intelligence agents, Mossad, who conducted and directed this mission. The explosion happened in front of a residential building full of media personalities.
Colonel's car reached the bomb-laden car that was parked right here. Behind the camera, a destroyed building that was hit by the blast can be seen. Surprisingly, the explosion happened in just one direction, the direction that the Colonel's car was going, and the blast directly hit the car.
The bulletproof car was hit, and Colonel Makhlouf got out without a scratch, without the slightest injury, and got into another car that was part of his entourage, and went about his business that day as if nothing had happened. The mission was a complete failure. Seeing the force of the blast and the precision with which this mission was carried out leaves experts in no doubt that none of the passengers could have possibly survived.
There was little damage given the fact that the car was directly hit by the blast. The car and its passengers should have been destroyed because the explosion was very huge and destructive, even damaging the buildings behind it. At the same time, the blast was not as powerful as you would have expected from the amount of explosives placed inside the car.
Colonel Hafiz Makhlouf is one of the central figures that play an important role in safeguarding the security of Syrian capital Damascus.
الذي يتميز بتعبير الكثير من الدارسين الكثير من الباحثين بذكاء.
According to pundits and experts, he is extremely talented and intelligent and has an extraordinary security-oriented intuition.
الشخصيات الوطنية السورية التي تحصن الأمن القومي السوري والتي استطاعت أن تنقذ سوريا.
So like other important figures that play an important role in safeguarding security in Syria and have managed to save the country from the destruction planned by the West and other enemies, he was assassinated with a car bomb.
فكان العقيد حافظ مخلوف الذي قدم الكثير للدولة السورية واحدا من هؤلاء المستهدفين بسيارة مفخخة.
Nowadays, they had changed the rule of the game against leaders. Also, Israel was the first state which legalized, which called the targeted killing.
Targeting Colonel Makhlouf means that they know what this man is doing exactly in fighting terrorism and chasing the leaders of the terrorist organizations that are acting in most parts of Syria. So in terms of collecting information about important people, their bosses, I mean, they were aware of the importance of this man, and they exerted a lot of efforts to follow him and to try to get rid of them in order to achieve this kind of victory in this war by killing this important man.
According to our investigations, on Wednesday, September the 5th, 2012, a car with a Syrian plate number and 4 passengers and a driver was moving from Lebanon towards Al-Ghair in the Arson area.
وكان بمتن السيارة 4 أشخاص وسائق وصلوا إلى العاصمة بعد ليلة قضوها
They spent a night in Ain al-Khazra and continued their journey in a stolen Red Crescent car at dawn.
على متن سيارة مسروقة من الهلال الأحمر نقل فيها امرأة.
A sick woman and a Mossad intelligence group consisting of 3 Israelis who held European passports and papers and journalism equipment arrived at Damascus in that car.
الأوروبي وبطاقات تعريف ومعدات صحفية. There
was also a Syrian who helped them enter Lebanon and move around Damascus.
ودخل المنفذون إلى دمشق وهم إسرائيليون بعد ما جرى رصد.
This Israeli terrorist group followed the movement of Colonel's entourage, which was passing through Damascus entrance at Meza Highway by tracking the sound waves of the Colonel's cell phone with the help of special tracking devices.
على الطريق الواصل من مدخل دمشق إلى أوتوستراد المزة.
Syria's weapons have turned it into a battlefield for the world's intelligence services. لذلك لا شك أن هناك مجموعات كثيرة.
Therefore, many elements that function under the world intelligence services do things such as kidnapping, attempted murder, assassination, bombing, and everything that happens in Syria these days from the intelligence point of view.
The terrorist managed to locate a cell phone at that time by following its sound waves. Every cell phone has its own kind of sound waves. So they programmed the bombed car according to the sound waves of Colonel's cell phone, so that as soon as the cell phone got close to the bomb-laden car, the explosives would detonate. The assassination was planned so carefully that the passengers of the targeted car could not be rescued at all, and that is exactly what happened. The blast hit the car, but Colonel Makhlouf managed to survive. With the grace of God, Colonel Makhlouf survived the attempt on his life without a scratch. One of his companions was killed, but Colonel got out of the exploded car in front of everyone's eyes and got into another car that was part of his entourage and went about his daily business, which was fighting terrorism as a soldier in the Syrian army.
The advanced technological assistance provided by the US in the form of high-tech equipment connected to surveillance satellites enabled terrorists to follow their target as soon as he left his house and track him down by following the sound waves of Colonel's cell phone. Colonel Makhlouf changed his cell phone every week, but the terrorists were apparently equipped with strong tracking devices that enabled them to realize any changes in their target. The terrorists also managed to track all the cars that were part of his entourage, as well as their communication devices.
There is no doubt that this mission was conducted by a very sophisticated intelligence service with the help of satellites and from far away.
When Israel's Mossad decides to assassinate the target, they place him under constant observation. Keep watch over his movements and follow him to the places that cannot be accessed, places you cannot even imagine. This requires certain personal infiltrative capabilities or high-tech equipment. They follow the target to places that one cannot even imagine. It means that they start at difficult places. For example, put somebody on the target's tail to follow him to places where he does his personal business, and then keep him under observation at the usual places he frequents on his daily basis.
First and foremost, Colonel Makhlouf was being watched by the U.S. intelligence agency. The U.S. intelligence service does not leave out even the smallest detail about its target in order to have a complete file on them. Israel's Mossad also considers him as one of the most dangerous Syrian officials who has acted against the interests of Israeli intelligence agency and has managed to destroy many Zionist underworld networks. Therefore, he is known as one of Syria's gifted intellectuals who is influential in the country's survival, and that is why an attempt was made on his life, one that he miraculously escaped with the help of God, who truly holds our life and death in his hands.
The terrorist network that tried to assassinate him had rented an apartment near the place of the incident, which was a good location for keeping watch over the target. They had also rented another apartment on the other side and had a third apartment near the southern crossroads. Israeli spies kept an eye on Colonel's entourage from this building. This is one of the main highways which lead outside Damascus, and there were other roads that Colonel used. He always changed his paths, and there were more than one convoy with him. But they still managed to track the sound waves of his cell phone and detonated the bomb.
The terrorists, who were probably members of Mossad, and the local spies that cooperated with them started coming to these apartments from September 2012 till August 2012. These apartments were rented by people who were connected to Saudi Arabia's intelligence system.
Almost all the equipment necessary for this operation, such as the satellites and the necessary documents, were stored in an apartment. And since this apartment was immediately inspected after the accident, they did not get a chance to destroy them, because that area was closed in, and the apartment from which Colonel's car was watched and attacked was occupied. The scene was set in a way that would put the blame on the Syrian government's opposition groups. That's why they were interviewed by Al Jazeera and said the operation was carried out by the Syrian government's opposition forces.
هم الجيش الحر ثم تخرج على الجزيرة ويقولون الجيش الحر قتل فلان أو علان. There is no doubt that spy networks, especially Mossad, have infiltrated Syria. Let's not forget how someone like Eli Cohen managed to gain and hold a high position in the Syrian government for several decades. So we must accept that Israeli intelligence has penetrated Syria. The US intelligence agencies can also find their way inside anywhere they want.
Spies can infiltrate anywhere. We cannot say any system is spy-proof. We are all humans, and every human has a weakness that can be exploited. That is why the infiltration of many spies is understandable. Many espionage networks have been discovered, and many others still remain unknown. Many famous people have been involved in these acts of espionage, such as Abdul Halim Khaddam and Ghazi Kan'an, as well as the networks that were influential in Lebanon and were in fact organized by the U.S. intelligence services. Especially at the time of war, exploratory infiltration increases between the two hostile sides.
ما قبل هي جزء كانت يعني منظمة من قبل المخابرات الأمريكية. ومسألة طبيعية إنه بحالة الحرب إنه يصفي في عملية اختراقات بين الأطراف المتنازعة.
One of Mossad's targets was the Scientific Research Center in Al-Safira in Aleppo. It was a very important target for Mossad because they could have weakened Syria's defense powers through it. The same goes for Syria's missile defense systems. Israel knows very well that lots of missiles that Hezbollah uses to target Israel are provided by Syria. And that is something Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah explicitly mentioned during the July 2006 war. That is why the enemies try to assassinate prominent military figures. This has happened in Lebanon, Syria, and in Iran. The main goal is targeting them.
I believe that Israel's Mossad is the main organizer and coordinator of these operations in the Middle East.
حتى الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية وجهاز الاستخبارات المركزي الأمريكي
Even the US spy networks leave their work to do Israel when they decide to act against the resistance or Syria or any other anti-American forces in the region.
ضد الأمريكيين دائما الموساد الإسرائيلي يكون المدير.
There are, of course, other subordinate elements, such as the intelligence services of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and even Turkey. They're just the operators, and Mossad is the main planner and organizer of the operations. Technological equipment such as the satellites used for land surveillance and air surveillance, the hearing surveillance operations done by the U.S. National Organization, or the space surveillance done by the U.S. in the Middle East or anywhere else in the world, are all directed and organized by Israel. The US provides Israel with all kinds of advanced technological equipment. So Mossad is the main coordinator that guides the intelligence services of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and other hireling and traitors who works against Syria.
Cooperation between Saudi Arabia and Israel, where security interests are concerned, is very strong and extensive, and the role of the US in the region complete the whole picture of bilateral activities in Syria. It is no secret that countries that work together on security issues never let their agents leave a trail behind or let the other party know the identity of their operatives. The importance of Syria's position, the US strategy for raining havoc in the region, and choosing Colonel Hafez Makhlouf as a target who holds security value and is affiliated with the president. All these factors required a wholehearted multilateral cooperation between the US, Saudi Arabia and Israel to take out Colonel Makhlouf.
يوميا كنت امرق لعند الوالد على المكتب.
I usually drop by at my father's office every day, for no particular reason, just to check on him and make sure he was okay.
بقى بهاليوم هاد تأخرت ومرقت عليه الساعة 10 كان.
I sometimes brought him some juice or other refreshment. On that particular day I was late and arrived at his office at 1 o'clock. He was in the middle of a meeting, the Crisis Council's private meeting.
I
waited for him in the room with his office's director. I was accompanied by his late assistants, Brigadier Davoud and Brigadier Tokamani. Then I heard a sound like that of an explosion, but there was no fire. It was a very odd explosion.
مثل انفجار لكن بدون لهب. انفجار غريب.
Targeting that secret meeting in which a group of important government officials, all trusted by Bashar Assad in the current crisis, were present, had enormous political consequences.
كان له تأثير سياسي كبير في هذه المرحلة ولكن تبين.
But it quickly became clear that the dynamism of the system and the structure of its management allow it to survive such a great attack, absorb it, and continue its resistance in such crisis.
في المواجهة والصراع.
The purpose of this operation was inflicting a strong blow to Syria's government and showing that by killing that circle of prominent figures, the whole system would collapse, particularly since those figures played an important role in safeguarding Syria's security. The terrorists succeeded in conducting the assassination, but they failed in bringing down Syria's political system because Syria has many talented and great officials. In addition to that, Syria has sincere and faithful soldiers that believe the terrorist elements had to face them squarely, not take refuge in residential buildings and get innocent people killed in order to save themselves.
During the investigations, we came to the conclusion that the main person behind the explosion was a person who was either in the US Embassy or in Turkey's embassy. This person was always present at either the US Embassy or Turkey's embassy. As soon as he realized that the Crisis Council was holding a meeting in the office of the National Security Director, he pressed the detonation button. At the time, he was present in one of these two embassies.
We are talking about Brigadier Dawood Rajiha, God bless his soul, who was the defense minister. He was a prominent military figure who played an important role in the resistance. The same goes for Brigadier Asif Shakat, who was the head of military intelligence. He was a prominent figure, not because, as the foreigners say, he was close to Bashar Assad as his brother-in-law. He was a great scientific and security official, something that the West acknowledged, and it was him who directed the affairs of Lebanon's resistance. Therefore, people who were assassinated were those who had the most influence in everything related to Lebanon's resistance, and the help received from Syria and Iran. But as far as I remember, the second purpose of this operation has something to do with the uproar at the time about the so-called attack against Damascus, and that, after the operation, Syria would be completely unstable and would therefore provide an opportunity for sending thousands of gunmen into Damascus and dominating it according to the plan.
Operation was in the context of the war against the Syrian regime that is launched by United States, Europe, Israel, and some other Arab countries.
كان في أحد الخونة الموجودين
There was a traitor at the defense minister's office, a guard who was responsible for the cleaning job as well.
يعني طبعا قدروا يشتروا بطريقة ما بأسلوب ما.
Someone paid and directed him to conduct this detonation. He had worked for my father's office for a long time and used to talk about patriotism, honor, protecting the country and nation, country's national security, and the happiness of Syrian people all the time.
النظام والغيرة على الشعب السوري.
There is no wonder that acts of espionage are conducted through people, that human agents are hired to operate against a target that holds great value for the enemy. The Crisis Council was very important for the enemy, so it was a special operation.
يعني هذه الأشخاص بالنهاية تخضع لكل الكثير من الاعتبارات.
If a similar mission was worth $1 million, the Crisis Council was worth millions of dollars in political terms. It does not matter if someone has moral immunity and a sense of patriotism. He is human, and that makes him weak. That is something that lies at the heart of the act of infiltration and espionage, because such a person can be easily recruited to do a criminal act.
It is true that every system and organization has a security wall, but these walls are penetrable and some people are capable of breaching them. But there are two conditions. First, the bomber needs to be trusted by the target to be able to easily work at that person's office or even go to his house. Second, one cannot perform such an operation with a car bomb or a bomb that is big in size. Technology has provided different tools for that purpose.
في تقنيات اليوم مثلا في
For example, newspapers that are in fact made from dynamite.
هي صحائف ديناميت.
خلية الأزمة هي جزء من
The explosion at the Crisis Council was part of an espionage war. When there is war, whether military or political, even at the level of a simple company, when you want to attack, your goal is to reach the person at the top, to hit the center of command and paralyze the affiliated organizations. And the Crisis Council was a fully equipped council. Of course, it had its own replacements, because there was always the possibility of being targeted just like any other person in Syria. So the enemy targeted the council, which was active, influential, and important in order to paralyze the pervasive security work conducted in Syria to fight foreign espionage.
لمكافحة التجسس ومكافحة المخابرات الأجنبية اللي كانت موجودة بسوريا.
That person entered the closest place to the defense minister's office in a public street that many cars pass through. He detonated the bomb there and then ran away. He ran towards the US embassy, but we don't know if he hid there or he went to another embassy.
It is obvious that that man could not have performed all the stages of this operation by himself, because this operation consisted of 3 parts, one of which was finding out the time and the location of the meeting, which was impossible, because the Crisis Council never held its meeting at one place. The location of the meetings changed all the time by mutual consent, and that place was one of the 10 places they would hold their meeting at that day. Therefore, preparation for the operation should be accidental. It means whenever the meeting is held, the bomb should be detonated. What is this bomb? A very sophisticated bomb made of sticker sheets that were placed under the table of the meeting hall. This sheet was the kind that changed once it was stuck, acquiring the color and shape of the table's wood. Bringing such explosives to the room was not an easy task. The young man who did it was hired by either the US or Israel, which shows the cooperation of intelligence services, considering whether or not Bandar bin Sultan had a hand in directing and performing this operation. His role was assigning a Lebanese woman who cooperated with Saudi Arabia's intelligence service with the task of recruiting someone for this job. An attempt which was apparently not successful. That is why the Americans were forced to have one of their hirelings who had infiltrated Brigadier Hisham Bakhtiar's office to do the job.
To speak about how can intelligence services in Israel make their members in the world, they are differing from Sephardim, Ashkenaz, Palestinian inside, Palestinians outside, Arabs, Syrians. For Syrians, they are targeting people who are in 2 ways. First of all, by proxy, indirect way, when they make some people who are belonging to or have a relationship with others to let those to make some operations which serve Israel and these people, but these people don't know that they are serving Israel directly.
Technically, this operation needs satellites and complicated computers and surveillance and reconnaissance systems in order to get exact information and can exploit it in the real time. For example, since the meeting started, there should be a surveillance on this meeting in the real time, and there's a connection with the man who planted these explosives. So that means that these technical devices are so sophisticated to an extent that it's only owned by superpowers in Europe or United States or Israel.
A plan was made to overthrow the government. Once this operation was done, there would have been an attack against Damascus, then the occupation of the presidential palace, and then putting an end to the government of Bashar Assad in Syria. This mission was not only an explosion and a security act of terror against the administration of President Bashar Assad, but also a part of a much larger plan, a plan that started with attacking the Crisis Council. The second stage was occupying the Mazza military airport and flying the military airplanes to bomb Bashar Assad's presidential headquarters, and then sending thousands of armed forces to occupy Syria and announce the end of Assad's government. From a political point of view, it should be mentioned that there was a political dynamism inside that system, and that dynamism helped the administration to survive the attack against the Crisis Council without weakening. In the framework of the Syrian army, we found out that because of a dynamic system that was part of it, they could act quickly even after the death of the defense minister. And military commanders quickly did the necessary developments and warded off the attack against Syria, drove off tens of thousands of terrorists from around Damascus. At the same time, the administration showed its power of resistance and experience in fending off the attacks of several world powers.
Syria's security systems managed to find the location of a farm and villa that were rented by the assassins of Imad Mughniya, one of the commanders of Lebanon's resistance, on February the 13th, 2008. Their investigations showed that a man called Adnan Muhammad Abdullah Ansari was the person who played the initial logistic role in this operation, but it was not his real name. His ID cards were fake as well. The real Abdullah Ansari was an Arab living in a neighboring country. That person had managed to get a real passport, a passport that was issued by Qatar's passport office, probably even with the official permission of Qatar's government. Carrying that passport, he could easily move around, thus playing the central role in assassinating Imad Mughniya.
The investigations conducted in Syria showed that Khaled Mash'al had a personal guard who was very close to him, and he had introduced him to Imad Mughniya several years ago. That man started to cooperate with Haj Ahmad Moghnier without knowing that the person he was cooperating with was Haj Ahmad Moghnier. He knew him by other names. He also knew that Haj Ahmad was a senior member of Hezbollah and is in close contact with Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah and was also in charge of Palestine's case. This same person had also cooperated with other people like Haj Avini, Haj Hassan Salameh, and other Hezbollah martyrs who were killed by Israeli bombs and operations. Those martyrs were responsible for providing the resistance with weapons and military training. So, there was also a spy in Hamas in the close circle around Khalid Mash'al, a spy that was not directly hired by Israel, whose presence the Israelis were not aware of. He was recruited by Qatar's intelligence service, and the Israeli forces were informed about the activities of Ahmad Moghnier through the person who was close to Khalid Mash'al, because that person was introduced by Khalid Mash'al and was trusted by him. He did not raise anyone's suspicions. So Haj Moghnier naturally trusted him and cooperated with him.
بهذا الشخص أو يثق بهذا الشخص ويتعامل معه على هذا الأساس.
In 2007, Ansari entered the Ibla Hotel by means of a real, official European passport. The person who knew Haj Imad was staying at the same hotel, which shows that his connection to Mossad through Ansari was established a long time ago. Ansari conducted his investigations about Haj Imad's activities regarding giving assistance to Palestinians through another person who was trusted by Haj Imad. So when the Israelis assassinated Haj Imad, they did not know his real name and thought that his real name was the one he was known within Syria.
Haj Ahmad got out of that building, reached the yard, and walked towards his car. There was another car parked nearby, a car that looked like those used by Iranian embassy staff, a Pajero that would not raise any suspicions. When Haj Ahmad reached that car, it exploded. The car exploded and Haj Ahmad was killed. The group that conducted the operation had taken up an apartment in a building in order to make an ambush. The yard that Haj Ahmad's car and also the bombed car was parked in could not be seen from the building, and the explosion happened when Haj Ahmad reached the car. It was dark when Haj Ahmad was going out, so the assassination agent was using night vision equipment to identify the subject.
I saw a plan, probably in the newspapers, in which everything was marked clearly. The location of the car, the location of Mossad's ambush. The plan looked simple. If you saw the plan, you would never think that such an operation could possibly take place in Beirut.
This target was a big one, so in my opinion, choosing that location was not for a minor political goal, but infiltrating and reaching the target, which was a valuable one, was done in Damascus.
The purpose of this operation was putting the blame on Syria in order to distance it from the resistance. This choice was a smart one, and this operation can be compared to the assassination of Rafiq Hariri in Lebanon. It could have changed the balance of power in the Middle East.
Ansari entered Syria in 2001 to direct some people. He was married to a Syrian woman and had a few assistants and followed Mossad's connections to Syrian hirelings. At that time, Ansari needed a mediator to infiltrate Hamas and work on behalf of Qatar's intelligence service and gather information on Hamas fighters who came to Syria for training, as well as the activities of the Hamas chief known as Hossein Salameh. Hossein Salameh was in fact Haj Ahmad Moghnier, God bless his soul. He was in fact being watched by the Hamas, not the Israeli enemy. If it was not for Hamas, all the intelligence services of the world would not have been able to find him. But the Hamas movement found him.
ولم تستطع أن تكشفه كل أجهزة المخابرات في العالم ولكن كشفته حركة حماس.
This infiltration happened through the trust Khaled Mash'al put in Qatar's hireling, the hireling who was also connected to Mossad, that is Ansari. Security complications are clearly seen here, and there are two possibilities. One is that the Qataris knowingly took part in the assassination of Haj Ahmad, and the other one is that they were unknowingly covering their hireling without knowing that he worked for Mossad.
وإما أنهم شاركوا من خلال عميل يغطونه يحسبون أنه يعمل لهم ولكنه يعمل للموساد الإسرائيلي.
واحد المتورطين في اغتيال
One of the operatives behind Haj Ahmad's assassination, who made the necessary preparation for the group of assassinators, was carrying a Qatari passport. And these are the international phone numbers which he used in order to call his manager's office in Damascus. 00437 66 814 and 00491 23456.
الرقم التالي 0049123456. هذه الأرقام الدولية.
These are the international phone numbers Adnan Muhammad Abdullah Ansari used, and he had a Qatari passport. And he was the one who identified Haj Moghnier and pointed him out to Israel's Mossad. He did it with the help of a famous person in the Hamas movement. This Qatari person played the central role in assassinating Haj Ahmad, in fact, finishing him off himself.
في تصويب الرصاصة الأخيرة للحاج عماد مغني.
هذا الرجل حينما
After Haj Ahmad's assassination, the phone numbers he contacted and the connections he had established in Syria were tracked and followed. In the end, they managed to identify and arrest 74 people who were spying for Israel. Some of the officers and staff members of military institutes were found among these spies, and it was a good response to Haj Ahmad's assassination because those networks were really dangerous.
تعتبر رد أيضا ورد كبير على اغتيال حاج عماد.
Those networks were discovered because Israelis went too far in using the person who was directing these networks so that Adnan Abdullah Ansari could facilitate Haj Ahmad's assassination for them.
من أجل تسهيل تنفيذ عملية اغتيال الحاج عماد.
Ansari was close to the person who knew Haj Ahmad. He was not cautious about who he associated with in Syria because he frequently visited there with the purpose of sending weapons to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. He needed people who did not know him personally but knew that he was involved in this cooperation.
The important person sent a man called Abu Ghasi to Damascus and rented that villa. He added an iron cage to the garden to prevent the dogs from reaching the car in which they were going to place the bomb. They rented a car and put it inside that cage, and according to the neighbors, Abu Ghasi was the only person who drove it. So Abu Ghasi, who was a Qatari man and had a Qatari passport, was also involved in the assassination of Haj Ahmad. The night before the assassination, a group of people in a golden car entered the villa.
عدد من الأشخاص لم يكونوا شخصا واحدا، عدد من الأشخاص دخلوا إلى الفيلا بسيارة ذهبية اللون.
This was the car that was parked somewhere in Madha Highway. They had switched cars. the car's passengers were in fact the members of the network that had conducted the assassination. They had switched cars after completing the mission, so no one could find any information on them.
تركوا السيارة هناك انتقلوا إلى سيارة أخرى ولم يعرف عنهم شيئا بعد ذلك.
إذا أنت عرفت شخص بتخطط.
You identify someone, then make plans and follow his tail, and keep him under watch on a daily basis. The first thing that is a security threat to anyone is their daily routines.
هو الروتين اليومي، يعني إذا أنت بيعرفوك.
When the enemies know that you go to work at certain days of the week and hold a meeting at 10 o'clock, daily surveillance becomes much easier, and the enemies can easily plan to target their mark.
بتسهلك مهمتك، بتخليك تحضر للنيل من هذا الشخص.
While we were investigating the assassination of Imad Moghnieh, I realized that such an operation could not have been possible in 1 week or even 1 or 2 months. It was done by following Haj Imad's daily routines, and that is how they could reach such an important and valuable target.
So we have an intelligence triangle which points to cooperation between Hamas and Qatar's intelligence service. Qatar's intelligence service had a direct connection to Mossad, which raises this question. Why did Khalid Mash'al allow Israel's intelligence service to get access to information about an important member of Hezbollah such as Imad Moghnieh through Qatar's intelligence service? Khalid Mash'al knew that Qatar's intelligence service was connected to Hamas security organization. We should ask Khalid Mash'al a question. Was it in good faith? Which wasn't. Or whether someone had infiltrated Khalid Mash'al's system. Now another question should be answered. Why was Haj Moghnieh assassinated, and yet Israel did not assassinate Khalid Mash'al?
السيد خالد مشعل.
Despite the ongoing efforts to destroy Syria, the country has stayed strong and steadfast in the face of challenges and adversaries directed its way. We can only hope that the nation's hope and strength will lead to victory sooner rather than later. And that's it for this week on Aperture. You can find today's documentary on our website at www.presstv.ir. And as always, we will be more than happy to hear your views on today's documentary and more. Contact us by sending your emails to documentary@presstv.ir or simply by following us on Twitter or Facebook. Thank you for watching, and until next week and another episode of Aperture, it's goodbye.